Ready to start your journey? Whether it's your first workout or you are a seasoned athlete, Endurance for Everyone Coaching wants to work with you. Our coaching team has worked with athletes from beginners to USAT national qualifiers and are comprised of experienced runners, cyclists, and triathletes who have a passion for healthy living and have been where you are. We offer comprehensive coaching programs from weekly support to basic consultation, all designed to help you achieve your goals. If you want to take your performance to the next level, look no further than Endurance for Everyone Coaching. Go to www.teamE4E.com and click on the coaching link or send an email to teamE4E@enduranceforeveryone.com. And let's get started.
Welcome to this week's Endurance for Everyone podcast.
Program is for entertainment purposes only. Though the hosts of this show are certified Ironman coaches, their attempts at long-course triathlons and endurance events should not be taken as an endorsement for you to do something stupid too. You should make your own bad decisions, then podcast about it. Now, let's start the show.
Well, we almost made it to December 3rd without putting a show out. But as you probably know by now, especially if you're in the Facebook group, that Karen and Rob both did Fire on the Mountain back a week ago now. So we did not want to wait until we put out a race recap on that because we know how you all love those race recaps. So for episode 163 of the Endurance for Everyone podcast, we are going to put out Rob and Karen talking about Fire on the Mountain. He does make a mistake at the end that he quickly corrects with another file. So bear with us. Hopefully the sound quality is good, and welcome to 163, and we will see you soon.
Hey guys, Rob coming at you today with a very special, weird, and cut together, although it's not really cut together because we're going to do it all live, show. I have Karen Clark on the other line. Want to say hi, Karen?
Hey there.
Yep, and we're going to go through and do a very brief Marine Corps recap. Then we're going to talk for a nice amount of time of this show. When I say nice amount of time, probably, half or so on a Fire on the Mountain recap. And then kind of maybe like a year-end recap, kind of what's been going on for Karen. She's been on the show several times through the year. And, as I've been on as well, kind of our highlights of the year and the best of, the worst of kind of thing. And go from there, just in case nothing else gets put out. So we have a nice little kind of cap or hat on everything there. So what do you think, Karen? Think we can accomplish that today?
I think that's good. And you know what else I was just thinking we should do? If there's anything we've got floating around that we're thinking about for next year, we should talk about that too. Bit of a teaser.
I think we can do that, Karen. It's a great idea. I think we can accommodate. So let's see.
I guarantee you've got some stuff up your sleeve that you're thinking could be pretty awesome if you could make it happen.
If I can figure anything out in the next 58 to 60 minutes here while we're doing it, I will go ahead and throw that out there. But I'll throw it out, and we'll see what sticks and really see what happens and where we get to with that. So I guess I gotta start it here. That's a very eloquent saying. I guess I will kick it off because I was the one who did the Marine Corps Marathon. So, I guess the best way, and Karen, jump in, ask any questions and such. It was a much different race for me this year, and I put one or two things on Facebook. I'm not as active as I should be out there, guys, and I apologize. And I don't ever want to come off on one extreme or the other, like, look, everything is so perfect and happy, and I also don't want to come across as, oh my gosh, everything stinks, So one thing I have to say about the race is Marine Corps is one of, I'm going to say, the premier top-notch races out there ever. If you've never been to it or haven't done it, I highly recommend it. I can't highly recommend it as a spectator. I have not spectated it, but a lot of people do. My wife didn't care for it a couple years ago, mostly because the metro was pretty jammed up and it made it difficult for her to get around. And there's always traffic in the DC area, but it seems it's a very well spectated race. You see see a lot of different areas. It's very nice to run on. I'm not going to go turn by turn on the course, but you kind of start out by the Pentagon, Arlington. You run north, and you're on you end up on this nice I'm going to say scenic highway where you run this nice out and back in the shade. Then you turn into the down, I'm going to say I can't even say where, forgive me, but you go through this park, and then it's around mile, I'm going to say 10 is what they call the Blue Mile. They have it all lined up with the when I say the fallen heroes, it's the photos of the Marines that went out and never came back type of deal. Then you hit the halfway point, you come out of there, you go through the mall, so you run by all the monuments, and you run by all of the the monuments and the museums. At that point is where you hit where the 10K starts, which is pretty cool because that way about I'm going to say it's over halfway. It's about 16 miles in, just under 18. That means there's a very extensive amount of porta potties as well, because that's where they stage that. It makes it very convenient. You run a few more, I'll say, neighborhoods. You're back out near the Pentagon where you started, and you run up, and they say, like, take the last hill. You run up and you finish right in front of the Iwo Jima Memorial. And hands down, I mean, when I say everything, aid stations are great, crowd support's great. There's Marines the entire way as the crowd support volunteer, if you will, helping everything out. Everything is great. The only thing that they don't do well, 2 years that I've done it, and it seems to be a consensus, that they, I guess, really can't get it, the shirts. And if you guys have seen it out there in the group, a couple years ago, they were in really nice red color, but it was like a mock turtleneck. It almost felt like it was choking you. I just can't wear it, no matter how many times I grab that neck and try to stretch it out. This year, the material was a fantastic material. It's a light, perfect, not too thick, not too thin, very soft. I actually wore it this morning when I went on my run, and it was a perfect shirt. But if you haven't seen the design of it, just go out to the Facebook page and look at it. It's terrible. It is the worst shirt I think I've ever seen. And Karen, did you see the photos of that? Have you any input on that?
I did see the photo. I don't get that excited about race shirts generally, but I got to say that one was pretty bad. I don't know
So
what they were thinking.
I have no idea. It's just one of those, like, you just smile and say whatever.
That marathon fills up really fast, right? Is that like a lottery, or does it just open and it's a first come, first serve kind of deal?
And forgive me, and I don't, without knowing that completely, but I think it is a lottery. And when I say I think it is, and I apologize for not knowing that, we can go out and look it up. There's a couple of ways you can get a guaranteed entry. The one that I know, and I haven't done it, is there's a race, and the registration might go off around now if it hasn't already. You would register now for an April race. That's the 17.75K. Okay, and that the unique distance, because it's 1775 with the United States and the Marines and so forth. Okay, and then you do that race, and if you sign up, get into that race, which it's easier to get into that, you then get in, you get guaranteed entry for the Marine Corps. And there's also some stipulations, like when I say my friends, and this was the first race, and if you guys hadn't, I'll get there in a minute. It's the first marathon I've ever ran with somebody completely the whole way, and their family has been running it. They're not the official ground pounders. There's this group of folk, I believe it's men, that have ran that race every single year since it's been put on. But if you do, I forget what the qualifications are, 5 out of the last 7 or 10 or such, you get automatic entry as well. So once you've done it a few times, you can continuously get into it, which is nice, because not a lot of races have that kind of grandfathering where you can do it. Generally speaking, though, I'm 99% sure that it is a lottery, and that's how I got in. But once again, I did it in 2015, so it would have been 2014. You're asking what I did 4 years ago. This year, my brother-in-law got in because he did that 17.75, couldn't do the race, so he put it in the group and nobody jumped on it, so I did, and then I took over and paid for his registration. So nice. I didn't go through any of those processes this year. I just paid the $50 fee plus reimbursed him his race entry, and I got in. So. And
it sounds like you had a similar experience to me doing Pittsburgh with Lloyd. Like, I didn't race it, I ran it with someone for the first time I had ever done that as well, and it was just a lot of fun.
It was, and it was. I mean, and that's something we were going to kind of talk about in the back half of the show, but we can interject that here. It was what, and another thing we said we're going to talk about is kind of like weather and racing and all that stuff. I ended up with 3 perfect races, and a perfect race, perfect weather, perfect everything, 3 in a row out of the last 4 or 5 weeks. And you just don't get that. That's like the unicorn season that you can't, that everyone's chasing. So, I did my Chicago recap, and Chicago, a little bit rainy and so forth, but it worked perfect for me, and I got my PR. That took the pressure off because I was really curious when I say, hey, what am I going to do? What am I going to, if I screwed the pooch for Chicago, I had another attempt here at Marine Corps. I didn't need it since I did well. So, and even leading into it a few days before, I wasn't quite sure if I was going to run with my friend Melissa. I was basically making the offer / the ask. I never want to like impose myself on somebody, but I knew she always was a little bit slower in pacing than I was, and didn't know if she'd want the company the whole way. But I'd never, like I said, never ran a race with somebody, so I wanted to. Once again, Marine Corps weather was perfect. She did say, yeah, let's go ahead and run together. So, I slowed down for Marine Corps, basically anticipating anywhere from, I'm going to say like a 425 to maybe a 445 based on how she felt that day. And, when I say we ran every step of the way together, we ended up coming across in a 432. And which I found out later was not her PR, but her second. This is like second in line for her. Like, I didn't realize we were pushing the pace that much for her while we were out there. But we just ran and talked and, mostly ran the whole thing. Couple of walk breaks, walked through the water stations. She had a little bit of cramping, so we had to, walk for some of that. But, exactly the experience you had said you had with Lloyd, I was just talking the entire time. We were, we tried to solve all the world's problems. We, got to know each other pretty well and hung out, and it was an amazing day, just like you and I had this past weekend, which we were out there about twice as long, so we covered a whole lot more topics as well. But it's just something I had never done, and surprisingly too, it was really nice, I should say interesting / nice. When I did Marine Corps and raced it in 2015, I was doing okay, but then it got humid, I blew up, I was off my race plan. You finished just feeling so defeated, like, oh, everything went wrong. And I think that was like a 430 as well. So to come across the line when I say the exact same time, but I had said since this was like my last quote long training run for Fire on the Mountain, it was like I had to finish and still be able to feel like, okay, I could go longer, I could go do more, and I finished with that, like gas in the tank, feeling good and all of that, and it was just a much different experience than I really have ever had coming out of a marathon. So.
Yeah, I think it really speaks to the, like I always have this idea that if you go into a race and you've got a little bit more fitness than you actually need to reach your goal, then you can kind of deal with any adverse thing that may happen, right? And I think that the fact that you could do that so easily speaks to the fact that you were fit enough, as you had found out in Chicago, to go way faster. Yeah. And you didn't need that fitness because you weren't going for another goal there. But yeah, it's that really nice feeling when you feel like you're just that little bit within yourself, right? It feels really good. And you still feel like you ran a marathon, right? You just don't feel trashed.
Yes, and that's why, and I had said part of my Chicago recap, I opened a loop and then never finished it, and that was when I talked about the Erie Marathon, the first one I did, and you say feeling trashed. I think that was like a 5.5 hour, and the shortest summary of that is went out way too strong. I was a 10-minute mile runner, and I ended up running about 8 miles with this guy and just BSing with him the whole time, and we were doing about an 8:30 pace. I was not cheering for that. So come the halfway point, I mean, I went from an 8:30 to a 10 to a 12 to like a 20, like real quick. I was hurting terribly, and I forget the gentleman's name there as well. I want to say it's John Mason. He was a guy from out Indianapolis direction. Many marathons under his belt. He kind of saw me, knew I needed somebody, and stuck with me, from mile, I'm going to say 14 to the end. You know what I mean? Come on, Rob, he didn't know me from anyone, met me and got me through it, and it was great to have that. I crossed the finish line of the Erie Marathon, sat down in a chair, which you should probably never do. And about 5 minutes later, my nose was itchy, and I couldn't pick my arm up to scratch my nose because I was so tired, literally. So then I had Erie's only 3 hours from Central PA where I'm from. I said, okay, well, we're going to drive home that night. That was the plan. I looked at my wife. She looked at me, and she just knew what a pain, how drained I was, and said, nope. And we extended the hotel that night. Like, we went to dinner. I went, back into the, went back to the hotel, laid down, and it was terrible. It was horrible. But every race has gotten better since then. Like I said, this one, we left the Marine Corps, and I was able to, I got on the train and went and walked. It was like another mile back to their house, to my friend's house where we were staying. Drove home that night. I did have some stomach issues that night. I was dealing with a stomach bug a couple days before and a couple days after, that race. So that resurfaced later that night, but had nothing to do with the race. That was just an extenuating circumstance, but it was a really neat, unique, great thing. Like you said, having that extra fitness that wasn't needed. And it was fun. I don't know how to say it otherwise. Like, I'm not, it's fun to get a PR, but it was just a fun race to be out there with somebody hanging out and just BSing, just like you're out for a long run with a friend. That's essentially what it was. And it was awesome. I have not had that experience until now, and it was until then. And then that was great.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about doing a bit of a recap of the year, but it just seems to fit pretty well right now. So, I think most people I've alluded to on a few podcasts and a bit on the Facebook page, I've had just a tough year. It's been physically tough. I just haven't been well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if there's any gift from this year, it's the fact that it forced me to have to let go of my own goals of going faster or going longer or just continuing in my own little, world of where I wanted to progress as a runner. And I had to take a step back. I didn't have a choice. And because of that, I've paced friends at the end of ultras. I ran the marathon with Lloyd. I've had so many different experiences that I'm not grateful that I got sick, obviously, and I wish I wasn't, but I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to do all of that. And when I look back at the year, those are the things that stand out for me. Those and some of the really bad weather races I've had, because I haven't had your luck with that one, Rob. But, it's just, those are the things I remember, just those people and those times. And yeah, it just adds a whole different dimension to being out there, I think.
And I think it speaks volumes of the person you are and your character as well. And in that, some people get sick, get down, get out, and it's life's over, we're on the couch, and it's Netflix, right? What do? You go out and, like you said, you pace friends at the end of an ultra. You go out and you pace Pete in the muddiest, terriblest weather race that you've said pretty much all year, I believe. And coming around on that the following week you come out and do the ultra with me as well. It's just that's you don't let it get you down.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that, this race this last weekend was definitely one race too many for me. I think that things just have accumulated, and I went into it feeling really, really crappy. Having said that, though, like I said to you leading up to it, man, did I need a day in the woods. Like, I really, really did. And, you talk about me running it with you. We both know that's not the way it went, Mr. Bozovich. You ran it with me.
You're saying my recollection's off, Karen.
No, I mean, and it was a joy to watch you being as fit as you are, just having such a ball out there. Like, a year ago, that would have pissed me off to see somebody else so fit and so able to probably just literally eat up that course on that day while I'm kind of dragging along, but it's just not how it felt. It was just a joy to watch you, and it made my day awesome, and I'm sure that's how your friend felt at Marine Corps. And it's nice to go out there with people who genuinely put their goals aside, and just settle in and enjoy the experience that they're having like that. And maybe that's a pretty good lead into this weekend we just had, because it was a fun day.
Yeah. Where do you want to start with this weekend? You want to go through and I'm going to interject now, and I'm going to say, in case anybody just started listening to this podcast either today or even just now 17 minutes and 30 seconds in, we had Kevin, the race director, on a previous episode, which he did link on his website, and he had said if we do a recap, to let him know, and just want to give him this timestamp to let him know that that is when it starts. Taking that, one step further is, hey guys, sorry, we had to cut that for a second. I started getting a call, and apparently the iPhone links to the Mac, and it started ringing in Karen's in my ear, and we figured you guys didn't need that. So anyways, what I was trying to say is, we'll go through, Karen, if you want to go, and we're going to do a little bit, when I said a race recap, but let's be honest on two parts of it here, and that is, it was almost a 33-mile race. We're not going to go mile by mile, turn by turn, foot by foot on this thing. So kind of like similar to Pittsburgh, what I figured we'd do is do a little bit of the pre-race, hanging out the night before, morning of, and then when I say take the race several miles at a time, that could be, we'll talk a mile or a 7-mile stretch, and I want to hear a lot of your opinion on it. I want to put a lot of my opinion in, and this is more of a, we're not going to go on for an hour and a half about the technicalities of the course. You can go out and find all of that online. I just want to talk about some of the to be honest, the fun we had while we were out there. So I'm going to throw it to you. What was your trek journey down like to the race? Where'd you stay? What'd you do? Give us just a minute on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just down on the border of Maryland, right? So from Pittsburgh, it was about just over a 2-hour drive. Actually really pretty, the fall colors up here. If any of you guys live in this part of the country, it's beautiful right now. The leaves are gorgeous. It was just a really, really nice drive down. The weather was awesome. Like, we stayed at, what's that casino? Rocky Gap Casino, Rob? I don't remember the name of it, which is still about a half an hour from the start of the race, but probably about as close as we were going to get to the park that it's held in. Is it Rocky Gap State Park?
Yes, and yes to both.
Yeah. So yeah, we left kind of cruisy time on Saturday, drove down. Like I say, I've been feeling pretty bad. I mean, I think I felt better last weekend with Pete than I felt this weekend. So to be absolutely bluntly honest, if I hadn't have planned to meet you there, I think we literally would have stayed home. I mean, that's how bad I was feeling. So it was tough, and I had probably the worst night's sleep I've had in a long time. Not to make this down, because the whole thing gets way better, but I have just a really painful skin condition right now. It's not good. I think I got like 2 hours sleep that night. So I showed up actually before Rob on the morning of the race, because he'll tell you about that in a minute. But Lloyd and I drove out there. It was a beautiful morning. The sunrise was just glorious. The clocks changed that morning. So even though it started at 7 o'clock, it was, really 8. So it was nice and light. Beautiful sunrise, amazing, freezing cold, but just one of those amazing fall mornings. So yeah, we got there, like I say, ahead of Rob, maybe feeling a little more organized. Do you want to give a recap of how you got there?
Yeah, so and this is more info, but it all goes into the story as well, and that is, Karen had graciously said she was going to run this with me, do it with me, such. Then we were at friend's house. This goes back May-June time frame, and we were hanging out, and another friend basically heard me talking about it and said, wait, how long is this? What is this? And I'll get more into a couple of side stories on that later, because Karen and I were discussing a bunch of it on the trail. But anyways, so he said, okay, I'm in, I'm going to do it. I'm like, all right. And then, so I rode down with him. My wife rode down separately, because he was a little in and out with a friend, Ryan, didn't know if he was going to do it or not. And then at that point, we had reached out to my mother and to my aunt to see if they wanted to come down, because it was going to be a long day. We knew that. We were anticipating anywhere from 7 to 9 hours, depending on the course, and was it muddy, was it not, and etc. So I didn't want my wife and to be solo with the kid, especially if we're only, like Karen said, 2 hours from Pittsburgh or so, where my family's from. So they ended up coming down as well, which is really nice. So we all, as a group, went out to eat the night before. Went over to the casino. They had 3 different places to eat, and it's a casino, resort, spa, state park. It's a lot of stuff. So when I say casino, it's not like, burgers in a food court type of thing. It was a good meal. Ryan and I then went to bed, and we had everything planned out, how we're going to get there. Karen insisted that I send her a photo of my race gear because, she thought I had too much stuff, and I very strategically and sarcastically, yes, I guess you could do that, passive aggressively maybe, I laid everything out on the bed, like everything. It covered the entire bed, and I sent Karen photos, and she said, hey, it's nice of you to bring stuff for everyone. So, I had the gear I was wearing.
I think it's more gear than I own.
Yeah. But it was, when I say everything, though, it was what I was going to wear, what I was going to put in my drop bag, what I was also going to have to change into after the race. You know what I mean? It was a lot of stuff, okay? So Ryan and I packed our drop bags. We got everything. And then I'm not saying we slept in. We just we're about 5-10 minutes late getting out the door. And, we didn't want to get there early. Race starts at 7. It was cold. It was freezing. It was 30 degrees when we were heading over, below freezing. So we didn't want to be there at 6 and sitting around with nothing to do. But if the race started at 7, which it did, we got in the car, and whenever we first turned the GPS on, it said 6:58. We're like, whoa! So Ryan put the hammer down a little bit, made up a few minutes, and which was on one road, which is a nice road, 68 you're cruising in on. Then you get on some billy goat paths on the side roads through the state park, which probably was a little faster than we should have been. But we made up a little time. We got there at 6:54. As such, I don't know if we didn't see it. We asked a few people, and they said it was gone. So we ended up not having drop bags because we were told the vehicle was gone. And so we parked, literally hiked maybe, Karen, a tenth of a mile over this hill from the parking lot where the finish is to where the start is at this overlook. If you haven't once again ever met or seen Lloyd, he's about 9 foot 7 inches, and he had his trekking sticks and was waving them in the air so we could really see him. Like, he could have not just signaled a plane, he could have stabbed one out of the sky and brought it down. So we literally walked up. I said, hey, Karen, ready to go? And the race announcer said, go! And off we went. So we had, I think, literally a minute to spare with that. I don't. There was a pre-race meeting. He said something. Couldn't tell you what it was. I missed the whole thing. So.
Yeah, it wasn't that much. He's an awesome guy. He really is. And he pretty much just said, if you get lost, well, yeah, don't get lost.
Yeah. When I say his sense of humor is funny, like his instructions for runners that were sent out the day before, like I just highlighted a few of his sentences through it just so that way you can get the feel or the vibe for it. And this says, on the top of it, it's that what, when, where, why, and so what, Fire on the Mountain, where, race date, or Green Ridge State Park, when, etc. Why? Must not have anything better to do. Then later on it says, on race day, my only point of contact is cell. Text often go through easier than a voice call. However, I'm lousy at texting, so plan accordingly. So that's all through his instructions, And he was a great guy. We had a few minutes to speak with him the day before at the packet pickup. Kevin was great. He was funny. So I wish I was at the meeting just to hear him talk because he's funny. It would have been fun, I think. So. But
the nice thing about trail races, especially when they're smaller and local, and again that's been the other gift of this year for me because I haven't been feeling great and I haven't wanted to make huge financial commitments. I haven't traveled a lot to races. I pretty much stuck to local stuff, and I've supported a lot of smaller races. And the nice thing about them is the whole race tends to have the personality of the race director, and the crew putting it on. And I felt like that's exactly what this race was. Everything about it seemed to just match how he was and how he wanted, whether consciously or not, how he wanted his race to be. And it seemed to attract the kinds of people that liked that. Like it was just, the whole thing just really seemed to fit him well, I think.
Yeah. Yep. You want to jump in and talk about the course? I'd almost say we can pretty much cover the course, the first half of the course in 5 minutes, and or based on some of their descriptions and so forth.
So the course pretty much is an out and back from the start. So that is exactly what it sounds like, right? The race starts and finishes pretty much at the same place. You go out for, I think it was like 16 miles and then turn around and come back. And it's run on 2 permanently marked trails, a red trail. So all the tree markings are red for the first 8 or 9 miles from memory, and then it switched to a green trail, which I thought was blue, but of course Rob was right, it was green. For the
We'll get there as
second
well.
half. Yeah, and the two trails were I think pretty different. So the first one, the red trail, is where most of the hill climbing was, and the reason it had most of the hills is because it also had most of the valleys, and the stream, of which I think was just the one stream we must have crossed, I don't even know how many times. So it spent a lot of time down in the gully
I
by
say
the
at
stream.
some point Kevin either said, I don't know if it's when I interviewed him or in an email or on the whatever somewhere, it was asked or answered like, hey, there are stream crossings, and then the answer is yes. How many? Too many to count. And it's one of those
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
so you start off, like you said, we go down this little bit of a road, let's say, what was that, a mile or so, and then you hang a left, and you're early in the race, you're not really paying attention, you hang a left, and you go down this big long, like Karen's saying, down gully, and then you hit your first stream crossing, let's say mile and a half in, okay? So I'll summarize, and then you could jump in as well. I'm gonna count the stream crossings, okay? So, and then it's literally like you cross it, but the stream was narrow enough that you could, leapfrog rock to rock, keep your feet dry, and then after literally, I don't know, 5, 6, 8 in that next mile to 3 miles, I can't even really give you an accurate judge. You kind of quit paying attention, and kind of a spoiler is, unlike Pete, we keep saying Pete from Fat Man Chronicles came out and did the race, marathon on the mountain at Seven Springs the week before with Karen, and that race was all muddy. There was mud in this race, but it was, I don't know how to say it other than the mud was at perfect spots, the streams were at perfect spots, everything. It wasn't treacherous because some of these ascents and descents, when I say we're literally on single track, the path was as wide as your feet. And there was no variation on that. So, if that was muddy, when I say muddy, it got a little bit torn up from people running on it, but it wasn't that slick mud that was going to be very dangerous. So, you'd be running along through a nice, almost like a field, and then you'd hit like a mud patch, almost like they perfectly placed it there. But yeah, I'd say by mile 4, you just quit counting stream crossings. And I'm going to say as well, this wasn't even where the majority of the stream crossings were. That was, I'm going to say, on the green trail. My thoughts. What are yours on that, Karen?
Yeah, I think just going back to the mud thing, for especially you guys that hike or do a lot of trail running, the good thing about it is that I honestly think the only reason the mud patches were there is because it was down in the gullies where the water table was higher, and it was kind of by a stream. So it wasn't muddy because they'd had torrential rain for 2 weeks, and all of the hills and everything was just crazy, like had happened at Seven Springs. So it really was just because you were down at like a water level. And that's what the mud was like, right? It was sort of like a little bit of water and some mud that you just kind of went through. So it was fine.
And like I say, Karen made fun of me on the way out, and Lloyd later in the day made fun of me. I forget what he said, but it was pretty funny. But we were rushing out because my boy was a little under the weather, and he said something about cold feet. Yeah, so I'm gonna say your first ever, your first time trail runner, typical on your way out. I'm hopping around the mud and left and right, and I'm trying to stay, as dry as possible. But let's be honest, Karen, it was cold. It was 30. It was 30 degrees. I did not want cold, wet feet.
I could not feel my feet. Yeah, the first 4 hours, my feet weren't just cold; they were like blocks of ice. Like it was. The water was cold. It was cold. Yeah.
Yeah, but eventually, and I forget around when it was exactly. It was mile 8.5 or so. I just looked at you and I said, "Well, I'm pulling a Karen," because like you had just. And at that point I'm gonna say the first stream crossing where there were no rocks. There were not that there was any bridges or anything, but there were no rocks, trees. There was no way around it. You had to go through it. And then from then on, I mean, dozens more. And once you get the first one under your belt, the next one and the next one, they just continue to get easier to the point where on the way back, it's just now we're just keeping pace, not even paying attention. And I don't want to say not slowing down enough through stream crossings that way you're not going to risk falling. But I would say the first half is, like you had said, most of the climbing, and you really notice it on the way back, and we'll get there because it's more important on the way back, I'd say. There were hills and stuff. I didn't even pay attention that we had ran on the way out. And then that's when we were on the red trail. Red Trail, like as Karen said, goes to Green Trail. Green Trail, kind of a large portion of it follows a river, so you're traversing back and forth across it, and or in either the dry stream bed or literally kind of scaling the rocks on the side. That's where the trail is marked to go. So there are just too many water crossings to count, and on the way back, I guess on some people on the way out, your feet are wet. On the way back, I didn't have a pair of dry shoes, period. And that was one of the things Karen was picking on me for. I was debating was if I was debating putting a pair of dry socks and actually a pair of shoes in the drop bag to switch. Well, and there's more on the course you want to talk about, but the last, what would you call that, half mile to that turnaround point, it's straight up an old, I'm going to say dirt logging road, if you will, to this overlook, which is beautiful. But right there at the bottom, had you changed your shoes or your socks, you would only have dry feet for a half mile, because the stream crossing when you come back down, it's 8-10 feet wide. There's no way around it, so would have been no point in changing shoes or socks unless you had a blister or something you were trying to take care of.
Exactly. And my kind of rule of thumb with these things is, again, if you don't have blisters, if your feet are just cold and wet but comfortable, why risk putting them in shoes that may not end up being as comfortable? So stick with what you got unless, there's something really wrong. But right at that halfway point, that's when it was just starting to warm up. Like we went up by that lookout and the sun was out, and I mean, it was beautiful. The day kind of really seemed to turn, and the warmth. It was just so nice to be out of that gully and in the sun. Like I felt like finally my feet started thawing out a little bit up there.
Yeah, and at that point, I had miles prior, like I had ran with my running jacket, gloves, because I hate having cold hands, and I had stripped it off, probably 4 or 6 miles in, and I was just running in t-shirt and shorts in like 34 degrees, but we were under the tree canopy, so it wasn't too bad. There wasn't wind or anything. But you're right, when we hit that turnaround, because you could have your drop bag, as such you can leave things too. So I left put my gloves in the pockets of my jacket and balled it up and threw it with the bags, and it made its way to the finish for me. And which kind of the last few miles of the day, then you're talking 8 hours in total, it might have been nice, and I think you ended up putting your jacket back on. It wasn't cold enough that it was uncomfortable, but there was that middle 3 to 6 hours where it was just nice to not have it on and to worry about it there. So, and I got to say, coming back, and when I say it this way, once again, lots of stream crossings, we're just blowing through them. It's once again, when I say everything is perfectly placed, things you can't plan, but it's when I say it's the trails, and that is if we hit a mud puddle, invariably a minute or two later we're crossing that stream. So it's literally like your shoes get muddy and then you wash them off in the stream. It's just kind of funny. I thought Kevin, I think, like you said, the race director, he put the aid stations they were, I think, perfectly placed and very well stocked. I mean, I don't know how this is the only race I've done. This is the only experience I have. I mean, Karen, you could speak more knowledgeably, but there was a variety of stuff that, looking at it on the front end, I don't do much sugars and so forth, but there was something for everyone, and on the way back it kept looking and getting more and more delicious, and I kind of kept going. They had using the halfway point as an example, I know there was at least 4 different types of fruit. They had a couple of those like Uncrustable like there was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. They had chips and crackers and pretzels and Pringles and gummy bears and M&Ms and things that you hear about. This is my first experience seeing it all. Is it pretty typical spread for these races, or would you say they go above, beyond? I mean, anything you wanted, whether you wanted sweet, salty, a little more substantial, or just a quick nip, they seems like they had it.
Yeah, I just think he struck, from my point of view anyway, as just that perfect balance. Because sometimes you go to ultras and they just go totally overboard, and I'm sure it's wasteful. I'm sure they throw a lot away. I think for newer people, it can actually just be worse because they arrive there and they see all this stuff and they can't decide what to do. So it's almost more confusing than helpful. I think he did an awesome job. I think he had a bit of everything you could want. I think he had enough of it. I think he had enough volunteers to help, and not too many people standing out in the cold that he didn't need. Like, I think they just did a really awesome job. Yeah, he placed them perfectly. He had the right stuff, he had the right people, clearly knew what he was doing. Yeah, it was just really, really well done. And I think that he it's great that he could use pre-marked trails like that, because it meant that even where they were kind of like billy goat single track trails up and down hills, I guess they're not really mountains, up and down hills, they were very well defined, they were very well cut out, very well used. He had marked the course where there were any kind of crossings, or where it seemed to me anywhere that you could be indecisive, he had put ribbons, so that we got pretty good, even though we sometimes kind of hate to look around to find the trail. It's like you instinctively got a sense of how it was marked and where the ribbons were, and you could just tell when you were facing in the wrong direction, right?
I'd say there's a large portion where we were running along where, now you're 15, 18, 20 miles in, right? And like you said, instinctively, we're not even really looking. I'm not even looking for trail markers anymore, because you'd come up, but you're coming back. You kind of have an idea how the flow is going to go, but instantly, if we cross, like a lot of those were the stream crossings and such. If you cross the stream and took 2 steps, literally, you did it a couple times and I did. We take 2 steps, we're like, no, something's not right, and it's just like that sixth sense. Then you turn around and you're like, oh, there's the orange ribbon that he had added, and you're like, there it is, and away we go.
And there's definitely an art to that. Like, that was the first time you had been out on course, and there are definitely some course markers and race directors that just intuitively have a knack of doing that, and it's not always the case, and I'm notorious for getting lost. So the fact that I could navigate through there, and I think even if I hadn't have been with you, I still think I wouldn't have gone off course, done like a whole bunch of bonus miles like I've done before. He did an awesome job. And he also didn't mark the heck out of it, right? Like, you still have to pay some attention. And I like that about trail running as well. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. And I'll say, so aid stations are great. Course was marked great. Like you said, coming back then, that green trail coming back, it was just crossing the stream, doop 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 doop, and then you get on the red trail, and the red trail, you had said it. That's where we had the billy goat, and I remembered one of them, but I didn't remember the other one. Like, I didn't remember the second one coming back, which would have been the first one going in, and that's right about mile 29, I think, is where, and we had just, at this point, so kind of going into a narrative and less about the course, we had caught Ryan, the guy that had gone down with me, and him and a couple folks were, as they were saying, caravanning. They were kind of going out together, back together, running about the same pace, and you and I are kind of caught them / ran with them for a few miles, I don't know, maybe, and then kind of started spreading out because, I was not trying to push our pace, but also not trying to lollygag along either. So we did a lot of walking. I guess that's where I'll interject here and say, I'd say now this may not be typical for everybody. Like, I'm looking at the race results. The guy that won the race, in 4:43, so what, a full 4 hours or so faster than us, he really wasn't lollygagging out there, right? So he was running a lot. But I'd say we ran probably, 20-25% of the time. And I think you can really, on this race, not saying all trails, probably could increase that. I'm going to say maybe half the time. But there are definitely sections of this race, what we're calling the Billy Goat Trail, where I don't care how long I would be out there hiking, running, etc. in trail community, I don't think you would ever be able to run down them nor run up them. And I say that because I posted a few photos out there with our, on the Facebook group. And I think, Karen, you can confirm this. When you're going up this one section, Ryan looked at a topo map later and said we went up 500 feet across like a quarter mile. To put that in perspective, the trail was so steep going up before it switchbacks and obviously coming down. If you're going up, you're looking at the person in front of you. You can reach out and touch the person in front of you, but you're looking somewhere between their knees and the small of their back. I mean, they're almost half a body width above you is how steep you're going up. Fair assessment on that? And there was, 2 climbs like that?
Yeah, I think that just in terms of the way trail runs go, I would actually call this one a really runnable 50K, because it didn't have that much elevation for a 50K. I think it was around 4,000 feet. But what makes it super runnable is that 4,000 feet, like Rob says, is was very steep ups, which also meant then that there was a lot of it that was either flat or close to flat. And I agree with you that I would never run up those hills, but I actually think the downhills were very runnable.
Yep.
You know,
And
I think
that's what
that
we
they were
started
in
doing a lot
condition.
of. Yeah.
Yeah, we jogged down them, and totally, if I had been, even close to where I was like a year ago, I absolutely would have belted down those things. The trail was in really good condition. It's not like Pennsylvania, rocks and roots everywhere. Like, it was perfect, and I hate to keep this voice out of my head that just had so much like just frustration and regret, because I was thinking, man, I wish I'd been out here a year ago. Like, I wish I'd done this last year. It's like, because it was just a runnable course. You could see the trail on the flats. You could see way ahead of you. It was begging to be
Yeah.
raced.
The
It really
only
was.
non-runnable flat stretch I'd say is part of that green trail, and I might have to make the distance up, and let's just make it up and say between mile 10 and 13, or maybe, and then coming back, around the same. There's a stretch where you're running through the creek bed, or the river bed, or whatever you want to say, and it was really rocky. You'd have to really watch your stepping there, but everywhere else it was nice. Like you're saying, it was flat. There wasn't rocks, there wasn't roots. The path was the trail was well trodden, so you know where you're going, and you have enough visibility to look out ahead and actually continue to see where you're going without continuously staring down. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
There were a lot of very, very runnable portions of this trail. The
Yeah,
majority of it, as a matter of fact.
it's a very cool course. If that's what you like to do, if you like to do ultras for the running aspect, not just for the hiking, I would say this would be a perfect course for you.
Yes. I agree. And then, like I said, when I say that kind of wraps up, I'm going to say course description, and the majority of it. Hey, we came back and we talked about the couple of steeps, and then, like I said, that first mile or so, like I said, you're running down this road. That was a heck of a hike back out. That was some elevation right at the end.
Yeah, I mean, and I didn't tell you this because I felt like I've been griping all day about how crappy I felt. But when we were coming down the last downhill, I had twisted my ankle about 3 weeks ago, and it was actually probably worse than I thought it was, because normally it would heal up pretty fast. But I tweaked it again coming down that last bit. So I was kind of glad to get to the road, because then I felt like I could pretty safely, even though it was a little painful, I could pretty safely, once we got up that steep part of road, I knew I could run on it on the road, because I wasn't going to twist it again at that point. But yeah, that first part of that road, I didn't realize how steep that was when we ran down it going out. So, yeah, coming back, that had a bit of a gradient there to get back up to the top.
Yeah. And do you want to say how the race ends? And I think I'd done it with in an interview with Kevin, but then I had completely forgotten about it until we literally got there.
Yeah, I think he didn't decide on some of this until right near the end from what he posted. But, most trail races are pretty casual. This is probably one of the only ones I've done where you didn't actually have any formal timing chip. There was nothing on you. So that's why when Rob said he got to the start and the guy just said go, you had to start with the crowd, because it wasn't like your time would start from when you went across the start line, right? So everyone just started, and that was 7 o'clock, and that's when he started timing it. And then to finish it, they had like a really nice fire at the end, because it was still getting pretty chilly. And so as you came into the finish part, they had set up a little station with logs of wood that they gave you, and then you ran down to the official finish and threw it in the fire, and that's when they officially wrote down the time. But those logs were pretty heavy. Like,
I thought they were pretty light, Karen.
I'm sure you did, but you're like twice the size of me. So yeah, so seeing as you're bigger than me, I'm sure that log did not feel anywhere near as bad.
Right. And we only had to carry it, 100 yards? If they had to carry that thing like a mile, it would be a bit much different scenario there. So
Yeah, it felt a little longer than 100 yards to me, but you're right, it was pretty short.
It could have been 102. Who knows?
That's true. The nice thing for you was you thought we were going to have to go back down that little hill exactly to where we started, right? We didn't have to do that.
Right. So that's when you said the only variation is, so we start at this overlook, you run less than a tenth of a mile and turn right. When you come back then at the end, I thought we were going left back to that overlook, but we didn't. We hung a right, and once again, it was 100 yards into the finish. It was just around the corner, and I didn't know that. Maybe it was put out there and I just missed it or forgot. Like I said, because I had forgot we were going to carry that log to the fire as well. Because as soon as I saw it, I remembered it. But there was, whenever somebody was just, it was just a spectator, was just paying attention. And as we were coming around that final turn, they really just started ringing a cowbell. So you heard it, through the woods. And so we just kind of followed the sound over to the end. And it was good. I mean, it was great. I mean, it was and also, I mean, when I say smaller race, I have some of the stats here. I don't know how big some of these are nor how small. I don't know if you had looked at it, Karen, but they did end up with 61 finishers. There was about 8 people that didn't finish the race, whether it was due to time cutoffs or if they were injured, I'm unsure. But one thing is, with that smaller, Kevin, I mean, every person I saw coming across the finish line, granted that he had their bib numbers and stuff, but he seemed to remember something about everybody that was coming across and spent a minute, talking to everybody about, I'm glad you came down, your first one, where, where you're from. And he seemed to remember something about everybody. And that was just a really nice personal touch, I think, that went very well with it.
Yeah, I got the feeling that he had, whether it's just the kind of guy he is, but that he had taken some time as entries came in, and probably paid attention to who was signing up for his race. And yeah, it was really, really nice. He just seems like a generally good guy, and it just seemed to attract a pretty awesome group of people.
Yeah.
People were out there like wanting to give it their all. It's not like it was a whole bunch of people just thinking, oh, I'll just go for a walk in the woods. It's like people were seriously wanting to give it a really good shot, and I think it was challenging for everybody who was out there. It was just a fun day.
Yeah, and just giving some of our results there then, you and I finished in 8.5 hours. 8:32 was our official finish time. Ryan.
Yuck.
Yay. It's my first one. It's still good. Ryan.
Okay, that is officially my slowest ever 50K, so thank goodness you were there or I would have been miserable.
So sorry for slowing you down, Karen.
No, we both know that's not what was happening.
Yeah, so we did 8.5, and I would venture to say, Karen, I would say, based on how runnable we think the course is, I think we could do 7 on that fairly. I don't want to say
Totally.
Easily, but I think if you were,
I think we could. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that the estimate I'd had in my head, if I just ran it at like a good pace, not like flat out pace, I think 7.5 would have been realistic just to like keep up.
yeah,
As good as I was feeling on race day with Pete. And then I think if you really, really wanted to go for it on those flats, I agree with you. I think
Yeah.
it's totally possible. Now, the conditions that if you went back could be entirely different. I don't know, but
yeah.
the way
We
it was
had,
on the
I was going
day-
to say, the mitigating factor was health for us, because we had, I'm going to say, probably, if not the best ever, has to have been one of their top best ever race conditions. I mean, temperature, like you said, cold out, warm back, dry trail everywhere we needed it, a little bit of mud, a little bit of water to be expected, but overall, I'd say it was just about a perfect day.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it afterwards because, I know that, you're a grown up and you made your own choices to kind of stick it out with me, but I know you could have gone faster. And I was making myself feel better because I thought, well, if you hadn't have stuck with me, you probably would have stuck with Ryan and you would have finished with him. So I don't know whether you want to give an update on where Ryan finished, but I figured that's probably what you would have done.
So it's 2
Okay.
updates in one, and that is Ryan ended up finishing. So we did 8:32. Ryan was 8:46. Now
Okay.
he beat us into the half. We were 4:01. We had a pretty even going in and out there. Ryan was 3:46 going into the half. But 2 things: his Achilles heel ended up being his knee. He was having some knee problems on the way back, and a portion of that is, he, when I say didn't train for this, he does hiking, and one of the things he had, we talked about on the way down, he does this 100-mile like quick hike, and he gave me a lot of details on it and such. But he's an Eagle, he's in his 30s now, but he's when I say former Eagle Scout, always Eagle Scout, I guess. So he's always out hiking and doing things like that. Plus he's really light. He's a very small guy. I don't know if he's 110 pounds, 130 pounds, but he's a significant, I'm going to say at least 90 pounds or 80 pounds lighter than I am, which would help him out, I believe, tremendously. But when I say he did minimal running, I think his longest training run was 6 miles. But then again, this is the guy that went out and did Pittsburgh on 2 weeks of training and finished it in the 420. So he just has a lot of natural ability. And that's why, and I was going to joke and I was saying earlier, we'll come back to it. When I first met Ryan, he was the one that I tell the story about. Like, I'm always, and you and I were, this is the conversation you and I are having, ironically, when we came up on Ryan. And I had said, when I first met Ryan, it's like, I was all so proud about how I got my triathlon time down to this, and he listens really intently and says, okay, yeah, you got it from here to here, and how long is this, and how's this? And he instantly just says, okay, yeah, I think I can do that 10 minutes better than you. Like, with just such this. And there's the difference at that time when I didn't know him, that you can be perceiving it as arrogance. Like, somebody to say, I'm going to go do a 33-mile race, that sounds pretty arrogant if you've never done it. But he knows because he's out hiking. It is just he is very full of confidence. And let's be honest, he wasn't last. You know what I mean? He was 40. You and I respectively were 44th and 45th. Ryan was 49th. You know, there were folks that came in. Once again, Ryan came in at 8:46. There were people that came in all the way up. 9:54 as the last official finisher. 61 finisher. So he did it. And he just knew he could.
Yeah, and I'm just always really, I try not to kind of get defensive when people say they haven't trained, but I just think that it's how people define trained or not trained, is really, it just varies so much from person to person. Because I would look at this, and I was actually just looking back at the races I've done this year, and, I have an awesome running coach, and he's managed to keep as much of consistent training as it was possible around everything I had going on. But I did a 24-hour race on the 22nd of September. And it was not long after that things started going a little bit, more south for me health-wise. So I really, other than doing a 10K and a race with Pete, the half marathon, a week ago, I had hardly ran since the end of September. So, I went into this feeling undertrained, but well rested. So,
right.
It's like everyone would define whether or not they feel trained. People would say, well, you'd already done 5 ultras, so of course you were trained and ready to do it. And I would look at it and say, yeah, not so much. So, it varies so much. And you can't compare. Never feel like you
One
should.
of the things you and I had discussed too, and I'll interject here, and that's and I'm going to say this in both ways, none of it being meant to be demeaning in any way, shape, or form. If you are, air quotes, only doing 5Ks and you train up to, it's your first round of it. I'll call it out and say it this way. If you listen to the Fat Man Chronicles, Gretchen going out and doing her 5Ks, if she lengthened her training plan to 6 miles, I don't think that is adequate to do this, right?
No, exactly.
But on the back end, it is this race, or maybe even trail running in general, I don't know, but I can say this race is very doable for somebody who is, I'm going to say dabbling in when I say the middle distances, not even marathons, maybe somebody who's a pretty consistent runner walker in the half marathon, because you can get in most likely under the cutoff if you run the portions that you can run, and like you had said way back when you and I talked about it, walk with purpose when you're out there doing it. And I say that because and I'm coming back on it, on the trail, you and I were out there, and I had said, I think I might be doing a lot more of these, and that reason being is I feel like I was overtrained running, because that's all I did all summer, because I was training for road marathons, and I was a little undertrained as far as the hiking aspect of it. And you could really get some good training / cross training in, like if you just go out for some nice long hikes. And that's where, like, when I say my knees were starting to get a little sore, they weren't like I tweaked it and hurt it, but it was a lot of the right left movements that I just wasn't accustomed to, and that's something where when I'm going back to the whole, I'm using big air quotes, am I trained or am I not trained? Well, if I just go out for a walk in the woods with my wife and Connor, it might not fall into a training plan, but it's definitely fitness that is going to come into play, that is going to help you finish one of these.
Yeah, and I think that, because trail races are so variable, you can approach it in so many different ways. And if you looked at all of the people that finished this, I would say that people went in there probably with half a dozen different strategies. There were some people that went into it knowing that If they just power walked and they could jog, some of the flat bits, that was their goal, and they would meet it under the cutoff, and that's really what they wanted.
Yep.
Maybe they had run it before and just missed the cutoff by a bit, so their strategy was a little different. And everyone's finish times, I think, reflect more their strategy probably
Yes. Yep.
than anything else. Yeah.
So I think I don't want to say beat this one to death. I think we've covered every great thing we can say, but I'm going to jump in with a couple of, when I say your questions on it, but also I'm going to say, hey, Kevin had, I think he reached out to everyone, if you realize, but I personally emailed him as well just to thank him for a great race. And he'd even said to me like, hey, glad you liked it. Hope to see you back. And I will jump in and say, I can very much give this race like the biggest stamp of approval, double thumbs up. I thought everything was perfect. That said, I don't know if I would, when I say go back and do it again, and only because I'm not a big race repeater. Ironically, as I've repeated 2 races this year, Pittsburgh and Marine Corps Marathon. And I definitely can say this can get me hooked into it, and it's going to be a heck of a benchmark to lead up to, or to try to match, for other races in the future. Although it was such a great race, I would very, very highly consider doing it again, and or doing it like once again if we got, I'm going to say a group, and or if we did some people that can do the relays. If you're thinking you can't do the whole thing, the 2-person relay would be a fantastic option, I think, for this race. I had so much fun out there running with you, in doing it and being out there for the whole day. But if somebody doesn't think they can commit to the training, I think this would be a fantastic way to get into it, into this culture, and doing the relay. I mean, your thoughts on all that?
So yeah, I don't know if I would go back and do this again, because a bit like you, Rob, there are just so many awesome races out there, and in every race I've run this year, again, because my fitness hasn't been there and my health hasn't been there, I've had this thought of, man, I want to come back and do this, when I'm in better shape. But the chances of me repeating any of the races I've done this year that were new are probably pretty thin. Just when you were talking about the relay, I would 100 a relay with someone for sure. I think it will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we lost you a little bit there, Karen, but I did hear you had said 100% that you would probably do it potentially as the relay.
Yes, and I would put dibs on the second half of the relay. I like the going back section way, way more than I like going out. So anyone want to do the front half? I'm happy to go and do the back.
I'm going to joking and very seriously interject, because I don't want a divorce over this, but no, I don't think my wife would. I'm just saying it that way. I don't know what, I don't know what next year holds, but I want to interject now. Kevin did just send out an email to all the participants, and he had said that they're going to be opening the sign up for next year, and they're, unlike years prior, they are going to be doing a tiered, to where if you go out, 2 things. Okay, they limited the race to 90 participants this year. They're going to have it as 100 next year, and they're going to do like a structured or a tiered, where if you sign up now, it's going to be one price. If you sign up after a certain point, it's another price, and then there's a third and final, I believe, price to it. So if anyone out there listening wants to get in, wants to do it, now is the time. I mean, you got a year to train. More that you can get from just doing a 5-minute walk now to being able to complete, I'm going to say the whole thing, but if nothing else, the relay. And I think this would be a fantastic race to as a first. It's a great benchmark, I think, for, like I said, for others. And if you've done other ones, it's great to come out to. So highly recommend some talk in the group and people to see if this is something you're looking at doing. I think, what is it, Karen, like $40 to sign up right now, in that early entry or whatever. So, I mean, you really can't go wrong with that.
No. And just absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if I'd go back and do the whole thing again. My feet are way too cold. The second half, absolutely, I'll be in.
So yeah, I think one is kind of bringing it all back around here too. So this was what ended ended both of our seasons. And that kind of question I'm leading into then is, what does next year look for you? Because I'm assuming this would once again end the season, a November race. What have you looked at, or what are you kind of committed to or thinking you're going to do next year, Karen?
Yeah, so I'm participating in this immunotherapy trial right now, which will go through to the end of August. So, I really have no idea what my health's going to be like. And lucky I have an awesome running coach who's willing to kind of tackle the ups and downs with me as I go. So, what I agreed with him, I'm actually heading back to New Zealand for December and half of January. So I get to train in the summertime. I don't have to train in the winter here. And I really would like to get to qualify for Boston again. I had a bib number for this year. I couldn't go. So the next few months for me, and again, I don't want this to sound as though I'm saying a marathon is easy, but what I want to do is pull back on the miles and the time on my feet that I'm putting in, and I'm going to focus a little bit more on speed. So there's a marathon in February, really close to Pittsburgh, that I'm thinking about doing if my training goes okay, while I'm at home.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing I got into this year, because I just didn't know how my body was reacting to anything, I started doing more loop courses, and I had never done that before. And that leaded me into timed races, like 24 hours, 6 hour, those kinds of races.
Right.
And they are always on small loops because people run as long as they want to and then they stop. So they can be a loop as small as a track or as big as like a 3 to 6 mile loop. So I think I'm going to get into that a little bit more. And I found some like repeat courses that just sound really interesting to me. So there's one in New Jersey. It's called the Mount Tammany 10. And you go up Mount Tammany and you've got 10 hours to go up and down there 10 times. So it would have like 12,000 feet of climbing in 10 hours over about 40 miles. So I've got that sitting out there. They only take 40 runners. And so I'm pretty close to signing up for that.
Cool.
I also have the Heine 50K, which is right near where you live, just
Yep.
near State College. That opens the day after each race. So that opened in April, and I signed up for that for this coming April. So that's, I think, April the 21st. I have a couple of 50 milers I really want to do later in the year. We have a trail called the Baker Trail near here, which is a 150-mile permanent hiking trail. And each year they divide that into 50-mile sections, and they have this cool like jigsaw medal that comes together if you do all 3 sections. I have 2 of them. So I really want to get the last one this year, or I've got to wait, another 3 years to get that. So
Cool.
that is in August. And then, I don't know, I'd like to get up to Infinitus. I'd love to meet Megan. I know John's going up there. I just don't know if I want to commit to anything over 50K so early in the year at this point. So, yeah, we'll see. Oh, I also have one other one. My running coach lives down in Black Mountain, North Carolina, right near Mount Mitchell down there.
Okay.
And they have a lottery for the Mount Mitchell Challenge, which is a 40-mile race all the way up to the top of Mount Mitchell and back down. I didn't get into that lottery, but on the same day, they also have a marathon that goes up to the Mount Mitchell lookout. So I'm really hoping to get down there in February as well. So for a year where I wasn't planning on committing to anything and taking a step back, I'm realizing I've got a little bit on the calendar. So.
A little bit, yeah. Being that I've got, let's say, I can summarize mine with a, when I say a Post-it note, I could put it on a stamp. I got nothing. And
Well,
that's
you've been all over the board this year trying out different stuff too. It's kind of an interesting time for you, I think.
Yeah, so when I say the things that are hanging out there, just they're nothing but thoughts at this point. And one potential commitment, but I'll say it that way, and that is, so my friend Brian, the one that was on the show, is the swim expert. He signed up for Sea to Summits, I think is what it is, and it's a triathlon. I'm not saying adventure race, but it's not like you're super flat you're gonna do. It's literally a if you read it, I forget, it's like a swim, and then you kind of like bike up a mountain and then run up as well. So it's supposed to be more of I'm not saying an adventure race, but it's more challenging than some flatland course, and that's the point behind it. So he signed up, so there's a potential of that to look at. I remember Andy.
Is it close to where you are, Rob? Like, where is it?
It's not. No, it's out of state, and I want to say I don't. Without speaking knowledgeably, I can Google it quickly, but somewhere north. I don't want to say New Hampshire or Maine, or it's somewhere north. See to Summit
Because that
Try.
sounds like that would be cool to go, even just as a support crew, if it was kind of close by. But
Yeah. See to Summit Triathlon. Give me 1 second here. So just quickly, their website, it's not loading real fast. It says Sea to Summit. The website is the number 2, try.com. And when you kind of look at the contact us, it's put on by New England Endurance Events with a P.O. box in South Orleans, Massachusetts. So it's up there. It seems like it's obviously it's way up there. So I can't get into the complete details. It's blocked out on the computer that I'm on, so I can't see it. But if you're going to check that out, so that's like I said, that's in July. That's an idea. Another idea is, like I said, Andy in the group. John's former co-host, he's returning to triathlon, and that's going to be up the Finger Lakes area. There's more of a possibility of that one because we have friends. That's only a few-hour drive from us, just straight north into New York. And we have friends that we just went up this past year and hung out at the Finger Lakes. They liked it, wineries, breweries, cideries, etc. So we might be able to get them to go, so that way my wife once again has someone to hang out with the little guy and such.
yeah,
So that's
when is that one?
again, same time frame. I can't completely say it's June, July, sometime in that time frame. It's a early. It's not May, and it's not like August or September where it starts getting cold. You know our weather up here. It's too cold too early, and it's too cold too late. So, and I forget it.
And it's too humid in the middle.
Yeah, that's it. So that's one possibility. There was somebody had sent me. I think it might have been Amy in the group, said about the Escape the Cape triathlon. I do believe that's May, June. Once again, I'm not perfect on the time frames. That's a contender. Once again, that would be like going to the Eastern Shore. So that's something to maybe check out potentially. And the last one there is the most strong contender is Pete. Pete, and we've talked about him 3 or 4 times already in this show. He's looking to do his first marathon. And he's going to do that in March down in Newport News, Virginia. So it would be a repeat of a state for me, but coming off of running that marathon with my friend Melissa and coming off of running this race with you and just having that experience and that camaraderie, it might be a contender, to go down and do that with the idea, and I don't want to sound jerky when I say it this way, I could train, but it would be a much easier training load than I wouldn't need to do the 6 days a week that I had been doing to try to go into Chicago. I think I could still keep my fitness level where it's at, be adequately trained in order to go out and do that with Pete and finish strong and obviously have a great day doing it, and feel good.
I think it's nice, like if you don't have any specific race plan for yourself, I think it's nice to have something early in the year like that.
Yeah.
That, like you say, will hold you accountable to keeping, a level of fitness through winter, but not be that grind of, I got to get out 6 days a week and get it done. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I could just jump. No, when I say jump, and that's the identity crisis I'm going through now. I go through it once a year. Not having anything on the calendar makes it like, well, what do you do? And at this point, it's like, well, I'm coming off of such a long year of running, so much running that I've never done. It's, I really didn't get much bike riding in. So maybe that's something. Triathlon would get me some of that. Maybe I'd want to just take a year off running and go do cycling. You hate to lose the fitness that you have, but when I say bleed it back a little bit, I could go cut back to 3 times a week, twice during the week and a nice long run on the weekend, keep up a really good solid base fitness. That way I could kind of jump in, let's say, and do a half marathon at any point, but not just beat myself up, and not, grind it too hard. So I got to figure out what direction I want to go. That'll then kind of dictate what racing and it was going to be on the calendar. That'll dictate what formal training I get into. But at this point, I'm just really looking forward to a little bit of a break.
Me too. And my body is saying, please give us a break. So I'm going to listen.
Finally, your body's finally going to thank you for it. So,
Well, this has been a lot of fun, and it's just it always just puts me in a much better frame of mind. Just hearing other people talk about what they're doing, and just thinking about what might be on the horizon. And I hope it's been useful just to maybe spark some ideas for some other people out there too. Who I think at this time of year, a lot of people are where we are, right? Like, they've wrapped up their year, they don't really have anything specific to hang on to, and it's nice just to dream a little bit. Think a little bit more broadly about it.
Yeah, very well said.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was Googling as well. The Andy race, I remember it was something different. They call it Steel Man because they do slightly different variations on the distances. So it's not an Ironman, so they're a little bit more. So they're steel. It is in. It looks like it's August. It was this past year. I'm going to say August 12th. So you can anticipate mid-August for that one. So. And once again, that's straight up Finger Lakes direction. So just to put that out there officially, he had put it out there. But yeah, so I don't know what I'm getting into. But when I say only time will tell, anyone has any suggestions, just feel free to go ahead and kick those right over to Karen and see what we can get her into next year.
Yeah, because I really, I've got nothing after May at this point. I've got to have something every month or else.
Or else.
Or else Lloyd will think there's something really wrong with me.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, well, Karen, I don't have much else. I just want to say it was a pleasure having you on here. It was great getting to hang out with you over at the race, and glad to hear that you had such a great year and you have things on the calendar, especially given the health conditions you've been going through, and you're in just such great spirits the whole time. So.
I just hope everybody had whatever they did or didn't do this year, or whatever maybe went the way they planned or didn't go quite as planned. You always can get something out of these things, right? It always forces you to experience something when you're out there, even if it might not have been what you had intended. So I just hope everyone enjoys the holidays and lays back a bit in the winter, and we'll get back onto it next year, I guess.
Yep. Tomorrow's another day, next month's another month, next year's another year. You got to keep working at it. So.
Yep.
Cool. Well, that's
right.
all I got. I guess we'll go ahead and cut it off here. Just thank everyone for listening. You have any questions, reach out to us in the Facebook group, myself or Karen. She responds back. She's got a wealth of knowledge. She taught me a lot of stuff. We're out there on the trail and leading up to it. That's about it.
I'm pretty up for any suggested challenges. Probably nothing involving swimming, though, I'd have to say.
I meant to say this. The entire 8 hours we're out there, if you don't like the swimming, most of these events have what they call the duathlon, where instead of swim, bike, run, it's run, bike, run.
I thought about that. Like, if there was something, kind of close by that wasn't too long, I would seriously think about that. And even if there's kind of like a duathlon or a triathlon relay, would also be something that I would.
Oh, there's lots of relays, and I even said that. Like, what we could do is, it's funny. You get Amy to do the swim. You get someone to jump on the bike, and you can do the run. There you go. You just piece it together. So.
See, and from what I understand, you own a bike, Rob. So there you go.
I own a couple. So what we can do is we get somebody else to do the bike. I'll bring down mine and a spare, so that way you guys can have a relay, and I'll do it. How's that?
I think that would be so much fun. So, these things can often come together at the last minute, and, people's plans can fit. So let's hope we can figure out something for more of us to get together and do a little bit more next year.
Yes, ma'am. Sounds good.
Right.
And now for the correction.
Hey guys, Rob still. One correction. I was kind of fact checking myself because I was actually putting stuff in my own calendar. I had it all right, but I had it all wrong. It just happened to work out. So when I was talking about Andy's race, you do want to put in, if you're trying to pull it up, it is a steel distance triathlon. But when I first put it in, I had even said that it came up as the Steelman race series, which does exist, but that's in Pennsylvania. And that is in August. And like I said, this past year was August 12th, 2018. I don't know when that's going to be in 2019. The one Andy is doing is Peasant Man, which is in Penn Yan, Penn space Yan, New York, up in the Finger Lakes. It also went off in around August 12th. Next year, it looks like it's going to be August 18th. So they're within a week of each other. And if you look at one, it's going to be in Pennsylvania. And if you remember Andy's in PA, you might just look at it and say, oh, that's the one. That's not the one. Steelman Triathlon is in Pennsylvania. Peasant Man Steel Distance Triathlon up in New York, the Finger Lakes. That's the one Andy's looking at doing. Just wanted to correct that in case anybody was going to go out and try to sign up or look at doing it. Thanks. Talk to you later.
As always, the gang comes through with a great race recap on Fire the Mountain. We will be back in a few weeks now. It seems like we just stopped. In the meantime, make sure that you join the Facebook group at teamE4E. Just search Facebook for that. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr, everywhere as teamE4E. Give us some reviews on iTunes and Podbean or any other podcast application that you're using. You can stream the show directly from podbean.com. Just search for Endurance for Everyone and you'll find us. So until then, keep racing.
Thanks for listening to the Endurance for Everyone podcast. If you have comments or questions for the show, send an email to teamE4E at enduranceforeveryone.com. And remember, swim calm, bike strong, and run steady.
For healthy living and have been where you are. We offer comprehensive coaching programs from weekly support to basic consultation, all designed to help you achieve your goals. If you want to take your performance to the next level, look no further than Endurance for Everyone Coaching. Go to www.teamE4E.com and click on the coaching link or send an email to teamE4E@enduranceforeveryone.com and let's get started.